The media got another opportunity to bash Donald Trump at New York's Al Smith dinner when he and Hillary Clinton were supposed to tell self-deprecating jokes, and some of his didn't go over that well.
Hillary believes that it's vital to deceive the people by having one public policy and a totally different policy in private. That's okay. I don't know who they're angry at, Hillary. You're right. For example, here she is tonight in public pretending not to hate Catholics.
Well, Hillary Clinton drew some boos as well. One reporter who was there has a different take from the mainstream media. Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill, joins us now from New York. So the media just absolutely creamed Trump for telling overly harsh jokes in their view at this Al Smith dinner. How did you see it?
I saw it a little bit differently, Howie. I was on the ground there, and look, Donald Trump got booed. There was no question. You just saw it in that clip. You can't deny the vitriol and the volume was much higher. But Hillary Clinton, according to my notes, was booed on 2 occasions. The Guardian reported the same thing. USA Today did as well. They are the lone exceptions. The media myopia over Trump the next day was over how he got booed out of the room, and Hillary Clinton did a fine job. No, not the case at all. She was just as personal and nasty on some occasions. The difference is that Trump is polling at 18% in New York City. I would imagine that's 0.8% among the New York elite, and therefore it was a hostile room from the beginning. As we saw, he couldn't even get off the punchline in that last joke because obviously he probably wasn't very well received going in.
Yeah, probably not the most representative crowd of the New York media elite. All right, so we've talked earlier on the program about Chris Wallace as the moderator of the third and final debate. How would you assess his performance? You've seen all the debates and the other moderators as well.
Usually not a big fan of conformity, Howie, but in this case, from the Washington Times to the New York Times, from the Huffington Post to the Washington Post, and of course The Hill, we saw that Chris Wallace did easily the best job as a debate moderator. And let me tell you why. I saw it 5 minutes in. He didn't fact check the way we saw fact-checking done in the past. Instead, he did something called pivoting. Donald Trump was talking about immigration and Hillary Clinton having basically the same platform as far as building a wall along the southern border, and he said, all right, Mr. Trump, let me stop you there for a second, and let me get Secretary Clinton in. Secretary Clinton, is that how you saw it? That's how you fact-check, Howie. And finally, he brought up topics that were relevant to this election season that we didn't hear in the first 270 minutes of debate in the presidential debates and the vice presidential debate. We saw the first question on the Supreme Court. We saw questions on immigration. We saw questions on abortion and late-term abortion.
Let me jump in for just a second.
A bigger contrast between the two candidates.
And
then obviously fiscal policy.
Some of the reactions were like, hey, the Fox guy was fair. Should people have been surprised? He's moderated other debates with his Fox colleagues.
If they saw the primary debates, you would see that he was just as tough on Donald Trump than anybody. He was the one that used graphics to fact-check him in one of the primary debates, remember. So
yes, all right.
He's got 50 years in this business, and they weren't paying attention if they thought he would be biased going in.
All right, so over the weekend, breaking news, AT&T agreeing to buy Time Warner for $85 billion if federal regulators approve. CNN part of Time Warner. How would it change CNN to be owned by a giant phone company? This is an organization that spends a lot of money on international news gathering.
Absolutely. Well, AT&T, they're my service provider, for instance, and what they have are the pipes to get to the endpoint. This is an endpoint, and you could stream content, exclusive content now. That's not what AT&T had, not just CNN, but Warner Brothers, HBO, TBS, TNT. But here's the thing about this, where I think if Donald Trump is elected, they're going to run into a lot of trouble because he opposes it, and maybe this is why. The FCC commissioner that approved the Comcast acquisition of NBC Universal was Meredith Baker. She then 4 months later went to work for Comcast as a lobbyist. So when we hear about a narrative around a rigged system, I have a feeling Donald Trump, if this story gets bigger, will bring up that exact point, that the FCC commissioner that approved an NBC Universal Comcast deal then went to work for Comcast 4 months later.
All right.
Whole bowl of wrong.
Well, news gathering is expensive, so we'll see if this deal goes through, whether there are any changes at CNN. Joe Concha, good to see you. And
go Cubs.
Still to come. Get a little Cubs reference in there.